Hi everyone, welcome back to The Technical View. Thank you so much for joining me. It's really great to have you here. We are checking out the world markets from a technical analysis point of view, a great way to just supplement the other things that you might be looking at, like news stories or fundamental research and that sort of thing. Really cool. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had some really great calls as well. Obviously, this huge head and shoulders pattern, and these are what they are. You don't have to put too much weight in them, but we did look at the actual reasons why they work. So that was also a pretty cool thing over the last couple of weeks. Now, last week, more specifically, we were looking for the short-term patterns or the single days that actually turn the market around. Now, just jumping into the S&P 500, that bar actually happened this last week, so that's great. And what we were looking for was a start on its highs, to go all the way down throughout the day, so quite a long-ranging day. What that is a signal of is capitulation usually, so people getting so frightened that that they're just dumping everything that they possibly can. And then the buyers come in at the end of the day or over the next couple of days in order to push the market back up. So typically how a trader might trade this would be to actually put their stop buy or their buy stop at the top of that bar and then their stop loss at the bottom of the bar. And as you can see, the market has moved up since then. So this is giving us a short-term signal, like a short-term buy signal. Just one thing to be considerate of is this overhanging resistance, so very heavy and long-term overhanging resistance. So even if it does move up all the way to around the 2000 level, and if we were to look at the retracements of this move, we'd see a 50% level at about 1960 and the next level at about 2000. So 2000 being a nice big fat round number, very psychological number for 2000. But at those levels, you're going to see selling, and at this big fat trend line, you're going to see selling at around 2040 as well. So just things to be very cautious of. Obviously, the other way, one last mention of this particular pattern, for those that do trade these types of patterns, you'll usually find that as soon as the market moves up 1 times their risk, so in other words, that amount again moving upwards, probably around the 1940, 1950 level, they'll actually move their stop loss to break even. So that stop loss will now move to break even, and they'll have what they call, a risk-free trade. Technically, obviously, not counting any gaps or anything in the market. As you can see, it could definitely reach that in the next couple of sessions, and then a lot of those people will have their risk off the table, so to speak. Let's check out the All Ordinaries, which is the market that I personally trade. Really similar scenario. Hopefully you can see that pattern. We've got the left shoulder there, the head, and the right shoulder. And again, as we were saying, the reason that this pattern, happens, or the reason that it works, is that it actually forms, a bear market forms with lower peaks and lower troughs. And all that we're looking at here, people call it a head and shoulders pattern. You can really call it whatever you like, it doesn't matter. But what we're looking at from a technical viewpoint is lower peaks and lower troughs. So currently, we've got the neckline here, and we did have a very similar day, so it did start high, closed, it went down a little bit and then closed on or near its highs. To me, the Australian market is a lot weaker than the American market. It didn't have that big capitulation. Like, it had a decent day, but if you look at other days, just back in history, look at that bar comparatively. Like, that's a big one. That's a very big bar, and obviously a huge range. We didn't really have that yet, so I think that there's still a lot more selling that could potentially happen on the All Ordinaries. Now, currently it's just consolidating around that neckline, which will happen. You'll find that the market tends to consolidate around trend lines or areas of support or resistance, and that's exactly what's happening. On a shorter to medium term basis, we would be looking for a little zigzag pattern up if it was to actually give us any strength in the short to medium term on the All Ordinaries. Now again, on the All Ordinaries, we do have to be very mindful of that overhanging resistance, which is that huge, big, long trend line. And as I said, same with the American markets, you'll find selling at those levels or at those big, long trend line resistance levels. Let's quickly check out the FTSE. The FTSE in Europe, again, really similar. There's that pattern again, hallelujah. And, again, very similar to the S&P 500, where it has found, and even the All Ordinaries, where it's found quite a bit of consolidation around that neckline. It's tried to break down through it. Even if it does move up over the short term, again, just being mindful of that big long-term resistance. So that will be a heavy weight on the markets for the next couple of weeks going forward. Let's check out the Shanghai Composite, and we've got the Shanghai Composite, so very, very similar stuff. What we're finding at the moment on the Shanghai Composite, it's finding that support at a horizontal level. So usually I'll mark out the trend line support and resistance. It hasn't made it down there yet because it's currently just resting on that nice horizontal support level, and that's at around the 2900 on the Shanghai Composite. And again, same as all the other markets, what we're looking at now is because we've had like a series of lower peaks and lower troughs, and we've got that nice big lower peak over here, then we've got a longer term trend line which is happening up to a year in time frame now, or getting close to it. So that's going to be our heavy resistance in the future, looking at about 3400 to 3600. Pretty simple stuff. And this consolidation, as I said, so the market finds consolidation at those support and resistance levels, which is exactly what's happening. So there's your sort of just peaks, troughs will happen in that little sideways range. What does that remind you of as well? Basically a continuation pattern. So very, very similar to the one that we were calling. This one here was, because it was such a flat pattern, it was trying to move upwards, couldn't quite do it, and then when it did break to the downside, that was the continuation of that move. So we might be seeing the same thing on a shorter time frame on the Shanghai Composite. If it does move up, then like I said, we just have to be very mindful of that resistance, that overhanging resistance at 3400. Now, last but not least, the BSE 30 in India. Over the last couple of months since I've started this market watch back up again, we've been looking at this beautiful channel happening over a year. As you can see, couldn't close above the top end of that channel, which is exactly what you'd expect. The market finds support and resistance in the future at those trend lines if you extend them out, often enough, quite often enough for it to actually work in your own trading. Couldn't close above it. Tanked again, and now what I was saying was the 24,000 level on the BSE, and that's exactly where it has found support currently. Not too shabby, and that support will still continue in the future, and potentially the market will just sort of follow that trend line down. If it breaks down below it, that's going to be a very, very sharp move. Otherwise, we can expect just more bouncing around in that channel, and just to consider, we do have that same trend line scenario on the BSE 30, so a very, a decent size overhanging down trend line that's going to cause a lot of weight on the markets in the future. And there we have the markets from a technical point of view. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. It's a little bit of fun. Obviously, we're looking at bear market territory for a lot of the markets around the world, and even though we have some short-term bounces, just those long-term weights to be considered. Happy trending until we meet again. Have a great week, and bye for now.